with a heavy heart, Princess and sits with her morning tea in the drawing room as the soft light of fall illuminates the room through the large windows of Gatcombe Park, creating lengthy shadows. In the distance, the farmland of Gloucester stretches out in a variety of golden and amber tones. However, an unspoken presence hangs thick in the air within this area. She has kept a secret for the past 28 years. The sort that sinks into your chest and becomes an integral part of your breathing, rather than the kind that is whispered in royal corridors or leaked to hungry journalists. Her well-placed cup reveals her thoughtfulness. The choice is final, and has decided to speak out, not in an interview or to the press, but in a private recorded conversation that will only be shared after much thought. After nearly 30 years of seeing how the world has constructed narratives around her sister-in-law and seeing the mythology surrounding Diana expand and become more detached from the woman she actually knew, it is time for the truth that she has chosen to reveal. She and the documentary, a confidant she has trusted for years after winning the respect of many in the palace, sit at a mahogany table with the recording device between them. After decades of public service, and has perfected the art of maintaining a steady stare, and she applies it here as well. Drama is not her thing. Sensationalism is not her thing. She has never shied away from telling it like it is. Many think they have the plot figured out. Starting off, her voice possesses that unique combination of authoritativeness and exhaustion that accompanies a lifetime spent in the spotlight. In their minds, they have a handle over Diana's emotions. They murmur things like Charles or Dodi and nod their heads in agreement. However, Diana's heart, like most human hearts, is far from simple. Deliberately touching the edge of her teacup, she pauses. There is no awareness of the gesture, an unusual display of emotion from a woman whose reputation rests on her unflappable poise. Something else existed, though, and no one ever heard of it or even suspected it. Maybe it was precisely because of that it held such significance for her. The atmosphere in the room is tense. There is a little lean forward even from the documentary filmmaker who has heard innumerable revelations about the royal family. That is not idle chatter. None of that is conjecture. The world's preconceived notions about the most photographed lady of the 20th century are about to be shattered by Anne, the unfiltered truth-teller. According to Anne, his name was James. Those 3 words set her on the path to uncovering a love tale that was penned in secret, at times when no one was around to witness it. Dr. James Coldhurst. However, that is also somewhat inaccurate. Contrary to popular belief, he was not the James Coldhurst associated with the Squidgate scandal. That was new, more profound, and concealed right under our noses. She gets up from her seat and walks over to the window, where the sun setting in the background will cast a silhouette of her. Actually, it was at a Save the Children Fund dinner in 1979 that we first crossed paths. He is a pediatric heart surgery specialist, and he was invited there by friends of theirs. Exceptional intellect, gentle gaze, the type of individual that prefers to listen than speak. In the spring of 1981, a few months prior to Diana's wedding, I introduced them. It occurred to me that she may benefit from conversing with someone who was unengrossed in the inner workings of the palace. One who treated her like an individual, not a potential customer, and seems to be aware of the irony, and her face shows signs of what could be regret. What blossomed from that introduction surprised me. Please tell me how I could do that. My brother's brother was going to marry Diana. A mountain of preparation and protocol had already been lifted for the wedding. In hindsight, though, I can make it out. Her expression shifted the moment he stepped into the room. She would skillfully navigate conversations at social events in order to be in his vicinity. There was nuance. When she desired to be understated, Diana could be surprisingly so. With a little squeak of the leather under her feet, and settles back into her seat. It was a wedding, the world's most desired fairy tale. Pretty Diana in that gown. By her side, Charles. Everyone is watching. At St. Paul's Cathedral, James Coldhurst was a member of the congregation. He watched as the woman he was developing feelings for wept as she married the future monarch from 3 rows behind her. It was then that I laid eyes on him. There was no mistaking his face. From the table, she retrieves an image that should not be seen by the general public. At a charity function, Diana wears her trademark smile, yet she seems to be staring off into the distance. After William was born in 1983, this was shot. The way she's smiling makes me happy. It had nothing to do with Charles, though. In the original, he stands directly next to her. This is only a cropped rendition. The fact that she wasn't trying to fake a smile for the camera was lost on the photographer. James, who had gathered to celebrate the medical team that night, was standing with her, and she smiled at him, and does nothing to switch on the lights even though it is getting dark outside. It seems fitting that the story she is recounting takes place as night falls. They were never involved in an extramarital affair in the conventional sense. No hidden getaways, no hidden motels. It would have been hard for Diana to avoid photographers capturing her every move. However, they may have had a more personal relationship. They had genuine talks, the kind in which you reveal your deepest desires, worst anxieties, and the true you, untouched by societal norms and expectations. The palace, with all its magnificence, might be the most lonely place on earth, even though it is the indestructible thread. Just a few weeks after her wedding, Diana found out about this. She attended state dinners and waved from balconies as if she were doing the role for which she had been selected. However, and witnessed the aftermath of the camera's absence. She noticed her sister-in-law becoming more introverted, noticed the fading intensity in her gaze, as if she were a candle losing its air supply, and responds, with an unusually protective tone toward her brother, that Charles tried in his own way. However, he had been up in a different culture and had different expectations. He was not taught to be emotionally available. He had always adored Camilla, and he still loved her. Even though he tried to be a good spouse, his true feelings were elsewhere. Such was Diana's knowledge. It was probably known to her before the wedding. Unfortunately, her marriage did not bring about the change she had hoped for. Instead of coming into this scene as a romantic hero or savior, James Colhust came as a friend who wanted to know Diana's true state and patiently waited for her to tell him, and says he wasn't involved in any plans. Neither professional nor social advancement were his goals. All he was himself. Because Diana had been controlled, photographed, and evaluated non-stop since her engagement, that genuineness was like water in a desert. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. They would meet up at charity events, which James had a good excuse to attend because to his medical job. There would always be other people there, and they would always be beyond reproach when they had tea at the houses of friends they knew. When the palace seemed too big and deserted, Diana would occasionally contact him in the middle of the night. Nobody ever bothered to record or document these exchanges. They only ever existed in the minds of the two individuals who sought solace in one another. And admits that she was present at some of these gatherings, not in a spying capacity, but because Diana would occasionally arrange to see me at Gatcombe and James would just so happen to be there. I believe she put her faith in me to offer protection without passing judgment. The impact those talks had on her moved me to act. She would come bearing the burden of the kingdom, but when she left, she would appear just like herself. The innocent girl she had been before society dictated her identity. On a sunny afternoon in 1985, and relates a specific incident. Even though the world wouldn't learn about the cracks in Diana and William's marriage for years, they were already there when William was 3 and Harry was less than a year old. James had traveled to Gatcombe for advice regarding a children's hospital charity that and was involved with. Claiming to be in the region, Diana showed up out of the blue and said she was only passing by. It was hours of sitting in the garden, as Anne remembers. Observing them from the library window was my job. There was no contact. To the untrained eye, their gazes might have given the impression of closeness. However, their obvious bond shone through when they leaned very close while conversing. Diana seemed to be laughing for the first time in months, and it was contagious. Here, James gave her his whole attention, as if her words were his only concern. That question is bound to be asked by the documentary maker. In the absence of any sexual intercourse, what exactly was this partnership? And thinks carefully about what to say. A love affair between the spirit and the intellect. At last, she admits that Diana's love for James was founded on true understanding, and that this knowledge may have been even more profound than physical passion. Instead of the Princess of Wales, he perceived Diana Spencer, a young lady battling for her life in seemingly insurmountable odds. He had opted for a life of service, she thought, not for fame, but to help others. He had no ulterior motives. They were familiar with one another. However, there was a cost to this acknowledgement. Diana had a husband. It was her offspring. The scope of her obligations went well beyond her own contentment. Also, James would never have asked her to drop those duties, no matter how he felt. He loved her deeply enough to allow her to remain where she was, according to Anne. Her voice carries a profound melancholy. Even if that was the extent of his relationship with her, he loved her enough to be a trusted confidant, friend, and affirmation that she deserved to be seen for who she really was. The machinery of the palace advanced. The marriage of Charles and Diana grew more and more troubled. Even though they couldn't put their finger on it, the press started to smell disaster. James, meanwhile, was a rock in Diana's life, an authentic link in a web of responsibilities and obligations. To him, she would confide things that no one else could hear, and opens out about her worries about her boys being a part of the system that broke her. As she feels the pressure increasing, she begins to worry about her mental health and fantasizes about the possibilities that would present themselves if she had complete autonomy. He would be there to listen, provide insight from a world beyond the royal bubble, and bolster her confidence when she thought it was slipping away. This one's a 1992 pick, the year the monarch would formally designate her as Annus Horribilis. There was a fire at Windsor Castle. There were 3 failed royal weddings, one of which was Charles and Diana's. After December's announcement of the split, the media went into a frenzy that rendered earlier coverage look subdued. An investigative media eager for scandal scrutinized every detail of their life, and sits up straight with her fists crossed. A lot may have changed at this point. The world anticipated that Diana would make new decisions once she was legally divorced from Charles, and the restrictions of her marriage began to crumble. Not to mention that she made decisions, some of which were made public. However, I believe that a part of her fervently desired to make the one decision that she refrained from making. Friendship was the only thing James Colehust had ever asked Diana for. However, after the breakup, Diana's life became more independent than it had in more than 10 years, and then discloses that he did something he had never done before. He was honest with her about how he really felt. In fact, it was in February of 1993 during a little supper with just the 3 of us. The Globe was glued to Diana's every move after she had been apart for 2 months. After I had left them alone in the drawing room, James finally confessed to her that he loved her, had loved her for years, and would be honored to make a life with her beyond the palace walls if she desired. Throughout the evening, James had been unusually quiet, and becomes quite quiet. The next day, she filled me in on the details. Upon reaching Gatcombe, she was inconsolable. Not quite sobbing, no. Cry more like the kind of tears that fall when your deepest desires are denied. She had feelings for him as well. Even though she had loved him for a long time, she was unable to pick him. Why? The filmmaker wonders. After her marriage to Charles ended, why couldn't Diana choose happiness if she loved James? Understanding the terrible situation Diana was in adds layers of complexity to Anne's response. Her children, and explains, William and Harry were everything to her, and she knew, we all knew that if she had pursued a relationship with James, the palace would have used every resource at its disposal to paint her as unfit. The custody battles would have been vicious. The press would have destroyed her, and her boys would have been caught in the middle. She couldn't do that to them. She wouldn't. There was another factor, and reveals Diana's sense of purpose. By 1993, she had begun to understand the power of her position in a new way. She was no longer just the Princess of Wales trying to fulfill royal duties. She had become a global figure who could draw attention to causes that mattered. Landmines, AIDS awareness, homelessness, mental health. Her celebrity, which had once felt like a prison, was becoming a tool she could wield for good. James understood this, too, and continues. He told her that if she chose to be with him, that platform would be lost. Not right now, but in due time. The royal family would band together. Charity organizations would put some space between themselves and the issue in order to stay out of the spotlight. No matter what she did, it would all fall apart, and he couldn't make her give it up. Not while her work was of such paramount importance. Diana then made her decision. Rather than pursue her own happiness, she prioritized her sons and her mission. She assured James that their relationship could never be more than what it was, but that her love for him would remain constant. One of the most responsible and altruistic choices Diana ever made, according to Anne, and claims, with an undercurrent of wrath in her voice, that people perceive Diana as emotionally driven and impetuous. This choice, however, was deliberate and well-considered. She considered all aspects. She thought about every possible outcome. It was the correct choice. Therefore, she went with the more difficult route. It was quite brave of them. However, the partnership did not come to an end since one partner prioritized responsibility over love. As before, James was Diana's trusted confidant and friend. They kept in touch, spoke often, and would meet up at social gatherings where his presence would be unnoticed. However, their encounters now had a melancholy tone, as if they were both aware of the potential that may have been had things been different. It was the last time I saw them together before everything changed, and whispers. Spring 1997 saw it happen at a medical charity banquet. Diana radiated all night long. Over the years since they broke up, she had grown more self-assured. Still, I overheard their exchange of glances as Sarah and James huddled in a secluded area of the room to talk. It was a simultaneous experience of love, sorrow, and acceptance. They were saying their goodbyes, but they had no idea it would be their last chat. A shadowy summer. As if a tempest were brewing, the summer of 1997 rolls into Anne's story. During the preceding months, Diana had dedicated herself to creating a fresh start for herself. She intended to devote more time to her humanitarian endeavors and less to her royal duties. As she contemplated her future, She wondered what it may be like when William reached the age of 18 and the royal family's expectations for co-parenting were lifted, and states with confidence that she was happy, authentically joyful, unlike anything I'd witnessed before to her marriage. She had found purpose in her life despite its flaws, not because her life was ideal. She was content with her decisions. Dodi Fayed then came into play. This is a well-known, or at least widely believed fact in the globe. Diana in the yacht photos taken by Muhammad Ali. There has been talk about a possible new romance. Every appearance was accompanied by a media frenzy. Compared to the romanticized version that the media presented, Anne's take on the couple's relationship is more nuanced, with care, and recounts how Dodi treated her. After years of emotional neglect from Charles, it felt amazing to be pampered by someone as kind and attentive as him. Although everyone expected it to be a wonderful love story, that wasn't the case. His charisma won Diana over. His companionship was pleasant for her. However, she did not love him. Could she possibly be? James remained her beloved. A secret that the public was unaware of is revealed by Anne. A lengthy phone call between Diana and James occurred 2 weeks before to her death. From the yacht where she was staying with Dodi, Diana called him late one evening to start it all off. Almost 2 hours passed during the discussion, and reveals, her voice quivering with emotion. She expressed her confusion to him about how quickly their connection was progressing with Dodi compared to her expectations. The Alfada were discussing the prospect of getting married. As if it were bound to happen, the media was already covering it. Once again, Diana felt confined. She felt as though events were carrying her along instead of letting her shape her story. Diana told Anne later that James reiterated his advice to do what she thought was best for her and her sons, that she was not responsible for anybody else's happiness, and that she should follow her heart. According to Anne, he let her go. He assured her that his love for her was strong enough to wish her happiness regardless of whether he were a part of it or not, and that he would stand by her no matter what she decided, including whether she married someone else. During that conversation, Diana shared something with James that Anne thinks is very important. When she got back to London, she stated she needed room to reflect, that she didn't want to jump into any new relationships, and that she wanted to concentrate on her job and her boys. She was making her own decision, as Anne clarifies. After what felt like an eternity, she was finally making the decision to write her own story. As was their custom, Diana thanked James for being a rock, a truth teller, and a continuous reminder of the real her beneath all the masks and responsibilities. While she was back in England, they plotted to have tea, but their plans were hazy. They had no idea those ideas would never come to fruition. Sunday, August 31st, 1997. Everyone will always remember that date. The early morning call came while Anne and the other members of the royal family were at Balmoral. An automobile accident had occurred in Paris involving Diana. Next, the second phone call. Dead was Diana. And says it plainly, the world came to a halt. All motion came to a halt. While I was at that standstill, thinking about James helped me get over my shock, sadness, and the weird unreality of the situation. Imagined him hearing the news first thing in the morning. His realization that he would never see her, hear her voice, or have another conversation like the ones that had kept them going for 16 years was something I pondered. Since no one outside of his inner circle knew why he was grieving, I had no doubt that his sorrow would be deep and intensely personal. The funeral was held in Westminster Abbey, and Anne was there. She and the other members of the royal family followed Diana's coffin in the funeral procession. Lining the streets were the millions of mourners, as she had seen. Candle in the Wind, performed by Elton John, was heard by her. The sight of William and Harry, who were just 12 and 15 years old, respectfully approaching their mother's coffin broke her heart. And I spotted James, she goes on to say. Obviously, he was sitting in the distant reaches of the Abbey with other friends and acquaintances. No one could tell that he had recently lost his soulmate from the expression on his sad face and eyes. Diana was the only name anyone had for the woman being mourned, even though she was officially the Princess of Wales. The woman he adored but was unable to have. The woman who had reciprocated his love but chose the unthinkable, to let their love go unheard and unrecognized by society. The reality that we bear. There was anarchy following Diana's death. There had never been a public funeral in Britain like it. Some wondered if Diana's death could have been avoided, while others questioned the palace's reaction and the role of the paparazzi. As if by magic, conspiracy ideas began to grow. The media rehashed every relationship, choice, and snapshot from her life, and they analyzed every detail. James Coldhurst said nothing during it all, and makes it plain that she admires him since she says he never spoke to the press. He was never an author. He made no effort to assert his role in Diana's narrative, going back to his job as a cardiac specialist. He continued leading his life with the unassuming honesty that had first attracted Diana to him. The fact that he kept silent to preserve her memory proved to me that what they shared was genuine. When asked what happened a few months following the funeral, and says she contacted James, supposedly to discuss a charity project, she really wanted to see how he was doing, so she brought him to Gatcom. Age had taken its toll on him. Grief, she recalled, had aged him in an almost tangible sense. Sitting in the same garden as him and Deanna that afternoon in 1985 was a familiar place. We also discussed her, mentioned her a lot. The individual, not the symbol or the princess. A mother's fervent affection for her sons, who had a wicked sense of humor, who might be incredibly generous when she wanted something and deceitful when she wanted something else, who was imperfect, human, and doing her utmost under impossible conditions. While they were talking, James said something too, and that has stuck with her ever since. He added that his love for Diana had shown him that selfless love is sometimes more powerful than extravagant displays of affection. To love someone truly is to stand by their side as they make decisions and grow, even if those decisions end up separating you. That his relationship with Diana had been innocent in its goals, free from expectation or possession, and he would not have altered a thing. "I am grateful," he stated, with an emotional voice belying her words, and expresses her gratitude for their many conversations, the precious moments they spent together, and the faith he had in her to be herself. That, he said, was plenty. Because being bitter was the other option, that had to suffice. And resentment would have desecrated all they had accomplished as a team. Time slipped away. William and Harry reached adulthood. As usual, life went on without Diana, but her memory lived on. James kept practicing medicine, eventually wed another doctor, and started a family of his own, and maintained the relationship they had formed via their shared love for Diana, and kept in touch with him on occasion, respecting his privacy. The documentaries have been viewed, according to Anne. Books have been read by me. Everyone's been guessing about Diana's connections for ages. James Witt, Dodi, Charles, and others. Speculation abounds on Diana's romantic interests and the people she might have married had she lived. The point is being completely disregarded. Her intense gaze causes her to lean forward. James Coldhurst was beloved by Diana. Her love for him was profound, unwavering, and unconditional. But her love for her sons was greater. She was more devoted to her mission. She realized that not all loves can be fulfilled, must remain cherished as a poignant, heartbreaking reality. Moreover, she had the courage to face that reality head-on instead of denying it, and takes her time picking her last words. Everyone hoped that Diana's narrative would end happily ever after. They wished for her a happily ever after in which she met her Prince Charming. But that's not how real life works. Also, happy endings aren't always the best representation of true love. James truly meant the world to Diana. It had deep meaning, and it was sacrifice and choice, not romance or drama, that conveyed it. She made her family selection. She picked out her job, despite the fact that it meant abandoning the person who truly brought her joy. She made the decision to conform to what the world wanted her to be. All light has gone out of the room. Almost no one can see Anne's face as she sits in silhouette. Now that enough time has passed, I will recount the narrative. Those who were in need of protection have now established themselves. William and Harry, now adults, know their mother was more than a symbol. They know her as a complicated human being. James, meantime, has always acted with dignity and caution. At last, everyone can see that Diana was loved, truly loved, by a guy who just wanted to know her heart. She gets to her feet, indicating that we are reaching the end of our discussion. For the past 28 years, this has been my truth. Everyone liked Diana, and she loved everyone back. She did it in a way that paid tribute to her own self, rather than how society anticipated or comprehended her. And I believe it to be the true essence of a fairy tale. Not the arranged marriage to a prince or the passionate affair with his billionaire son, but the slow, unhurried love of two people who understood each other's souls and opted to cherish rather than take advantage of that understanding. As Anne approaches the door, she turns around for the last time. No one else could have given Diana what James Coldhurst had given her. Without expecting anything in return, he let her be herself. He created a safe haven for her, a place where she could feel loved even when she was scared and unsure. Her present to him was identical. Their romance ended there. Real, albeit hidden and unseen. Just like any love that has ever existed. Princes and enchanted kingdoms had no place in Diana's real love story. Embracing love without possessiveness, making tough choices, and human connection were all themes. Carrying a love quietly, paying tribute to it by sacrifice rather than show, can be the most profound act of love.